What's up, everyone? Alex Rosman here, and welcome to Rosman Radio, the social first podcast where founders and industry leaders stop pretending everything's amazing and they tell the real stories, the wins, the failures, the why did I even start this moments, all of it. Most importantly, we break down the marketing strategies that are actually working for them today, not the ones some guru made up in a hotel conference room in 2016. So if you want real-world growth strategies told by the ones who have scaled multi-million-dollar brands, just listen.
All right, welcome back to Rosman Radio, the show where we talk to founders, operators, and marketers across all types of industries to learn how they grow, what they struggle with, and how they think about the future of their businesses. I'm your host, Rob Nichols, Director of Strategy at Rosman Radio. Today, we have someone working in a really interesting space. Eric Mayer is the CEO of New Day Diagnostics, a company working to bring more accessible and convenient cancer screening solutions to patients across the United States. They're early in their commercial journey, but already scaling fast, navigating growth, regulations, and the challenge of marketing in a medical category. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So for listeners who may not know New Day yet, can you walk us through the early days? When did you get started and what did this commercialization look like?
Happy to do so. New Day Diagnostics is a traditional diagnostics shop where we perform research and development on early detection methodologies for colorectal cancer and other cancers. We also perform research for other biopharma sponsors, and we do patient testing right here in-house in our clinical laboratory. So it's been an interesting journey. We started off in pure research and development more than 2 decades ago, and kind of stepped through all of the hurdles that you have to go through to develop a new medical product, all of the research, all of the clinical trials, mergers and acquisitions that take place in our industry. Then COVID was a big disruptor in 2020 for about 2 or 3 years where no one was doing any cancer screening, or very little, unfortunately. And so it's been a very interesting journey to get to the point where we have an approved product that we are able to now launch here in the US. And the beauty of what we're working on, because our whole mission is to drive more access to these diagnostic tests, because the best test is one that somebody will actually take. It doesn't help if it sits on the shelf or if the doctor prescribes it and you don't actually do it. You don't get any valuable health information. So we've tried to democratize diagnostics for cancer testing, create more access, and that's allowing us to now start to jump into some international markets as well as right here in the United States.
Yeah, and that's it's such pretty rapid growth over such a short period of time, and I know that you're trying to get everything kickstarted and up and running. Tell me about the marketing engine right now. What does that look like? How's your team structured, and how are you getting the word out?
Mm-hmm. So we're still a small, lean team. We're less than 20 people and historically have been, since my tenure with the company started a decade ago. You're right. The sort of commercialization post-approval and post-launch in the last 18 months has started to accelerate. But, we're life scientists. I'm a scientist by training, right? I did an MBA. I took some marketing classes. But a lot of our work is, personal relationships, a lot of, we go and attend trade organizations, trade show conferences and exhibit some of the traditional media, news and print. But right now, we're really going to be leaning heavy into the digital platform telehealth revolution, again, democratizing diagnostics, getting them out to the people where they're going to be most useful. So a lot of digital marketing, social media is where we want to be moving and moving very quickly.
Tell me a little bit about, because I know, just from hearing what you're offering, and for those at home, this is more of an at-home screening for specific types of cancer. Tell me a little bit about what that's like with regulatory guidelines or channel specific restrictions on what you can and can't say. How has that been? That experience hasn't been fun on the agency side, I can say. I don't know if it's been any different for you, but talk me through that.
Oh, for sure. And again, we are at heart, we are scientists and laboratorians and clinicians. So, we are always looking to not only produce the highest quality and deliver the best patient care, but also stay extremely cognizant of the rules and regulations. So, for our FDA approved test kit, which is a chemistry kit really that can be now marketed to other laboratories and to hospital laboratories, et cetera. That is very tightly controlled by the FDA label claims, what claims we can and cannot make. That's all based on the clinical evidence and the clinical data, the clinical trials that support that product. When it comes to our internal patient testing, right here, that's a different group that oversees clinical patient testing in clinical laboratories. And again, it's all based on data that we produce or that has been produced by third parties that is clinical relevance, clinical efficacy that we can point to. And, so we're living in sort of two different regulatory worlds, depending on whether we are selling and marketing the chemistry itself to another hospital laboratory or actually delivering a result to a patient.
Gotcha. And in terms of your digital marketing right now, what would you say is your primary area of focus, or what's working the best so far for you guys?
Yeah, it's really direct to patient. Again, democratizing and creating access to these new technologies, because traditionally, you might visit your primary care doc once a year, and they run a panel of labs, and then the rest of the year, you have no idea what's going on with your health. You're typically not seeking that out unless your doc is basically prescribing something for you. But what we're learning is more people want to take control of their own journey. They want control of their own health care and their own health decisions, right? And so that is really I would say, a post-pandemic trend, and that is where we see diagnostics moving. I envision a world maybe 100 years in the future where you'll have that Star Trek little tricorder, and I just scan my forehead and it'll tell me everything that's wrong with me. But I want to be able to do that myself at home. And if my kid is sick, I want to be able to do that at home without having to go to the doc every time. So that's what we've seen is direct patient, direct primary care, everything direct. And so that's why we've launched this month. It's called Colo Health Direct. And we want to get this to you, the individual.
Anything that can save me that exam, I'm all for. So I feel like you've got a strong value prop there. A lot of companies struggle with, especially in your field, struggle with like content creation. So if you're investing some in like, paid social media, or if you're investing in, trying to get the word out via traditional channels or D2C, whether it's email marketing or otherwise, how do you handle creating content for those channels? How do you support those right now?
So, we do a lot of our own internal content creation. Again, we're scientists and laboratorians. We have a deep understanding of what's happening with the biochemistry and, kind of what's happening globally with cancer incidents. We track and produce that type of content ourselves. We also, have partners that produce content that we can point to. And, especially now we're seeing the rise of colorectal cancer in younger people. That's not necessarily content that we are creating. That's happening here in the United States. That's being reported on. And so that is all content that is relevant, that we can, borrow that credibility, if you will.
Completely. I think we've all seen those stories, and it is scary. And it's a way to, I think organically and, search wise, you've probably seen a big boost when those stories come out. I would say, when you think about, like your biggest challenge going forward, is it simply scaling smartly? Is it, what are your biggest hurdles right now that you're running into that are kind of your roadblocks?
Yeah, I would say, the where to play matrix, right? So there's, as you said, scaling smartly. There's a lot of opportunity, and where should we, as a sort of small business that's getting our commercial engine up and running, what should we focus on first, right? We have those kind of conversations a lot, at the leadership level and strategically, where to play. Of course, competition. and just the advancement of technology. Technology advances 100 miles an hour, and unfortunately, approvals and things don't. So, keeping up with modern tech, keeping up with all the trends, keeping up with competition, and then also, staying with all of that going on, then staying focused on, a very tight, like I was saying, a direct to the patient, direct to primary care type focus. Those are kind of the challenges that we see is scaling appropriately, I would say.
Yeah, completely understand. We run into that a lot with our clients where it's, and you mentioned too when we've talked previously about a little bit of, going up against some major competition, like people that are extremely well funded and have been doing it for a while. And what we've tried to do is really find pockets where we can really excel. So whether that's channel, a specific campaign, a keyword, anything that we can latch onto that we have more traction where we can scale, responsibly. Have you found that also to be the case where, you may not be able to compete on major search terms around colorectal cancer, but when it comes to at-home screening, you're a relatively smaller pool, so you can play in those waters, in those ponds a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really focusing, kind of getting to the nitty gritty, focusing on relevant keywords and sort of what I would say, not necessarily niche market, because there's 100 million Americans that should be screened every year. And right now, about half of them are not. So, we know that there's a tremendous opportunity to get in front of these individuals that are not being screened by the competitors, right? The competitors are doing a great job screening the population that's being screened, but they haven't moved the needle, right? Colorectal cancer is still the number 2 cancer killer in America, and it shouldn't be if we were screening everybody. And it's the number 1 cancer killer in younger people now. And we're not even getting screened because we're not in the guidelines, right? That's what I was saying before. The regulations aren't even keeping up with what's happening in the real world. So, that is sort of a niche that is not yet being addressed. There's a lot of people that should be screened that can't or aren't, and that's where we fill in that gap.
Gotcha. Where do you think the biggest, opportunity? Where do you think the biggest awareness gap is for you guys? Is it with younger people who just don't know that this is happening? Because I've seen the headlines for sure, and it scares me. But I still haven't, gone in and gotten a traditional exam. So, do you think it's there? I guess it's a 2-part question. Do you think that the lack of awareness is mainly amongst younger people? Because to be honest, you're the first one that I've heard of that has an at-home test. And then do you think that your strategy right now is would you consider shifting more of your strategy to a channel like TikTok or to something that targets more of that audience?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great question. And I think you're right. It's not necessarily lack of awareness. It's just, I'm not sure what the right word is, but it's lack of urgency, maybe, right? As I mentioned, typically you're only going to your physician for a wellness exam once a year. And that's the one day you think about your health, unless there's something wrong. Like, oh, my stomach is hurting. maybe I'll go get that checked out. But generally, you're not thinking about this area of your body. You're not thinking about your bowels and your colon and your rectum all the time. It's not something we talk about all the time. And so that's one of the reasons people, they traditionally don't have signs or symptoms of colon cancer until it's in late stage. So it can be growing inside of you for years without you knowing it. And again, it's just one of those things that's out of sight, out of mind for most people. So now that this is becoming more, more mainstream, where there used to be pink ribbon races for the cure for breast cancer. Now we're seeing a lot more on colon cancer. Every March is Colon Cancer Awareness Month. These news stories with James Vanderbeek and all of these folks that are getting diagnosed are getting more and more mainstream. And so, yes, getting to the patient, getting to the individual where they are, that's our whole goal, right? Because they're only going to that physician once a year. And so getting in front of them on a TikTok or getting in front of them on an Instagram or on a platform where they are looking every day, that helps drive the awareness, but it also helps drive the early detection.
Completely. And I think you hit it right on the head with urgency. I think one thing that we've seen when we've represented clients who are in, the medical space where they've had to get products FDA approved or products that have been, had to go through all of that regulatory, work, is that usually the barrier to entry needs to be reduced somehow, right? Your product in and of itself reduces the a big barrier for people, which is the uncomfortableness of going and getting, a colonoscopy or something like that. But it reduces the friction point. But what we spend a ton of time on is, things like conversion rate on their websites, and how do we make things mobile friendly, and this is irrespective of industry really, but how do we get people to learn about us, visit the website, and complete what they need to complete to get their test in the most convenient and fewest steps possible. Yes. Tell me a little bit about the work that you've done on your own site to kind of take a look at that, analyze it, or improve it.
Yeah, we're going through that right now. I almost like to say we're kind of beta testing while we're live. So, earlier this summer, we did a lot of A/B testing. We had, a marketing landing page. We had all the back end logic and the checkout and the stripes and all the stuff that's way over my head. Again, I'm a trained biochemist by training. So these are things that, I work with good friends of mine. Some are investors in my company. Some are original co-founders with me that have some of that, have actually some pretty good experience there with sort of the web development things. But that's exactly what we're doing. And we're learning from our patients. We're learning from the consumer. Every time we get a phone call, and we do answer the phone when you call, unlike a lot of the competitors, right? So, we're here in Knoxville, Tennessee. We still have that sort of Southern charm and, friendliness to us because it's consumer friendly, consumer facing. It will be the Chick-fil-A of testing, of, colon cancer testing. But all that is to say that, we take that feedback seriously. We're constantly iterating and streamlining and trying to reduce those friction points, reduce the steps, make it a seamless user experience, because it's all about access. It's all about getting people tested. And it's a personal mission, not just because I've been in cancer diagnostics for a long time, but I have it in my blood. I have it in my family. I know family members that have had a positive test on my test. And, we may have saved their lives by detecting a polyp early or detecting a precancer early or early stage cancer. So it's very important we create that access and continue to reduce that barrier and make things as frictionless as possible. And we're just doing that iteratively as we learn more about the customer experience.
Completely. Yeah. I think it's almost ridiculous to think that something like, a mobile page or like something that we're developing, on our own with our internal teams on a website is making the difference in someone, life or death, literally. Could be. But cancer is one of those universal things where it touches everyone, and it's everyone can, if not identify, at least empathize with what people are going through. So that makes this all the more important. What do you see as is next for New Day? What's in your near future? What are you prioritizing as you head into to close out the year and into 2026?
Sure. So we are really prioritizing the sort of direct to patient experience, and really getting the sort of at home testing, the at home send out direct experience. That's going to be a huge focus for us right now and into 2026. We're also working on two international markets while we continue to expand here in the U.S. domestically. We're in the Southeast, and we just started into Texas and Kentucky. We're going to work on New York and California next here in the States. But there are access points in underserved communities around the globe where cancer incidence is rising. And so we've identified two such markets that seem to be, we have great partnerships there. They seem to really need this type of healthcare. And so we're going to be expanding into those two markets specifically next year. One is India. The other is in Mexico. And so those are really the three main drivers next year: direct to patient, direct to consumer, direct to primary care for Health in the United States, as well as the two international markets. Now, behind the scenes, we're an R&D company. We're researchers. So we are making enhancements and improvements every day to our colon cancer screening: better detection, earlier detection, smaller sample volumes, more convenience for the patient, more stability of the sample, all the stuff that's boring biochemistry you guys don't care about. But we're doing all of that in the background. And then we're also looking at other cancer types as well: lung, liver, breast, ovarian. We have intellectual property, and we have pipeline programs for multiple cancers behind the scenes.
That's exciting. If there's one thing that's coming of, as we get new technology and everything with I think are surrounding the latest technological advancements that can be scary sometimes, but I feel like the one exciting thing is the potential for new medical breakthroughs. And I feel like it's really great work that you guys are doing. And I think this, your direct to consumer product is really interesting, speaking as someone who's probably part of your target audience. And I hope our listeners think so too.
Yeah, colohealthy.com with a Y at the end, colohealthy.com.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Please go visit and learn more about New Day and the exciting work that they're doing. Eric, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate it.